Regarding Yemen, the Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights said today in Geneva that at least 142 civilians, including 36 children and 27 women, were killed in Yemen and another 224 wounded between 3rd and 13th of July. This brings the total civilian death toll since March 26 to 1,670. Another 3,829 people were injured during this period. Civilian infrastructure has also suffered, with at least 187 sites partially or completely destroyed as a result of the armed conflict. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme reports that 13 trucks crossed into Yemen yesterday and 27 today. In July, so far, more than 127,000 people were confirmed to have received emergency food assistance in the southern governorate of Taiz and Laj. This distribution happened through WFP's local partners, including the Yemen Ministry of Education.
Yeah,
These
On
are
Yemen, Ramadan is coming close to the end, and there is intensification of attacks by the Saudi-led coalition against southern cities, which has emboldened Al-Qaeda, specifically in Aden. How does the United Nations view helping Al-Qaeda to take control of areas vast in near Ataz and Aden?
Look, I think what is important what has been important for the United Nations since the beginning of this conflict, what continues to be important to the UN, to the Secretary General, is for the parties to actually implement their commitments to a humanitarian pause. We have not seen it. Despite the fighting, we have been able to deliver some goods, as I've just mentioned, through the World Food Program and its partners, and it's a little bit of good news, but it's obviously not nearly what we need. Yemen remains on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, and it is clear that all parties need to respect their engagements. Once we have a humanitarian pause, we can start to build on that and address the political issues and other issues to create the conditions for a durable ceasefire and then a political agreement. I think we see in any country in conflict, conflict creates the space for radical groups to flourish, and it's one of the many reasons why we need to see the end to this conflict.
Has this message been conveyed to those who are perpetrating these attacks against
I think the message that is conveyed to all the parties is to stop the fighting.
When was the last
Nizar, I'll
contact?
come
When was
back.
the last
Nizar, I'll
contact?
come back to you.
Just want to recapitulate on Yemen.
Recapitulate?
Yes, I want to go over again. I think
Okay,
what you said.
I only like to capitulate once, but
Well, bear with me.
okay.
Your side got assurances from both Hadi people and the Saudi side that they would agree to a unconditional ceasefire 24 hours after Hadi sent a letter to the Secretary General, which he had numerous conditions. Am I correct in saying that?
You're stating your. Hold on a second.
It's a true or false question.
No. Okay. I understand it's a true or false question. I will refer you back to, yes, we had received a letter. As you know, we had received a letter. The special envoy had been in, I think, what can only be described as very intense discussions with all the parties, both in Sana'a and Riyadh, to discuss the pause, to get the commitments we needed. As I mentioned in my earlier answer, the issue of the pause was discussed with Saudi officials, and then after receiving the commitments we needed from the Yemeni parties, and President Hadi advised him that he had informed the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Saudi officials, of his intent to support the pause. Go ahead.
Mr. Sheikh Ahmed told me in an interview that he visited the commanders of the Saudi Arabia who were conducting the aerial attacks on Yemen, and that he coordinated with them how the ceasefire is going to be. Can you, of course,
Well, if he
this
told
needs no
you, yes.
confirmation. He told me that.
Okay.
So, didn't he convey that, in this case, that the ceasefire will entail that they should stop all these sort of attacks directly?
Well, I mean, I think
and of course, he has conveyed that to the Secretary General.
I mean, I'm not understanding your question, but I'll try to answer it nonetheless. I think that a commitment to honor humanitarian pause is pretty simple. It's a pause in the fighting.
Yeah.
It's an unconditional pause in the fighting.
When he
We
visit-
have the parties. We haven't seen the parties honor the commitments they have made. We call on them yet again to honor those commitments.
If he visited the commanders and he coordinated with them how the truce will be, so doesn't that mean that they accept it or in any way?
I mean, I really don't know what to add to what I've already said. Masood, then Mr. Lee.
So, yes, Stefan, it was just a follow-up which I wanted to ask, but in any case,
Back to Yemen, unfortunately. When you announced the commitments for an unconditional truce, you cited the Hadi side that they made this commitment in the letter to the Secretary General of July 8th, but that letter has a lot of conditions in it, so something in 24 hours had to change, and was that Hadi's people told the UN envoy that those conditions would be left for later negotiations.
Exactly, and I think
Did they tell them that? Yeah.
The statement that we issued on that day made that clear, that a lot of the other issues would be dealt with as part of an eventual discussion for longer-term ceasefire, and obviously for the political track.
So-
again, I think it is understandable that the focus is on the work of the mediator and the UN. But I think the responsibilities of all the parties involved in this conflict are very clear.
that's because you
and
announced the truce.
they also clearly know what they have to do to initiate this unconditional
The
humanitarian
focus is on
clause.
the UN because the UN announced a truce that never
No,
happened,
that's why I
and we're
said-
trying
that's
to
why I
figure
said
out
it's
why. We're trying to
understandable.
figure out why it didn't happen.
No, I
And
completely
you got
understand.
commitments, and he said.
We received commitments, and obviously these commitments were
Are
not
you,
honored.
in your own mind, clear about what happened, or do you also have does this building still have questions about what happened? Why it didn't happen?
It's clear in the fact that the parties did not honor the commitments they had made to the UN.
Right, but why?
That's pretty
Why?
clarity.
Why
I
did-
think you'd have to ask them. I'm not going to start to analyze the different motivation of the parties
You're the
involved.
other side of this in this discussion.
I'm sorry?
You're one of the interlocutors.
you
with
put your
them.
mic a little closer.
You're one of the interlocutors.
I completely
One of
understand.
the-
I completely understand your question, but this is what I'm going to say.
Well, one of the things that we heard is that Sheikh Ahmed has been telling every party what they like to hear. And this is what has been publicly criticized by some leaders in Yemen. Another thing, the United Nations threatened with, not threatened, asked for investigation regarding the UNDP attack in Aden. Was there any response from the coalition about that? Because obviously it was an aerial attack.
I do not have an update on that.
And I've asked 5 times about these people stranded in the
I'm
Saudi border.
I'm trying to harvest as much information as I can for you, Nizar.